My name is David Matthews, and I never thought I'd be sharing my life's most painful chapter here. Linda and I have been married for 18 years. We met in college, and I was instantly drawn to her energy and passion for life. She had this way of lighting up any room she walked into. We got married a few years after graduation, and soon after, our daughter Megan was born. We settled into a comfortable routine in our cozy home in a suburb of Denver, Colorado. Linda was always the social butterfly, the one who could strike up a conversation with anyone. She had this infectious laugh and a smile that made you feel like the most important person in the world. I fell hard and fast for her, and those feelings never really faded. She was the kind of person who remembered the little things, like my favorite coffee or how I liked my shirts ironed. For a long time, I thought we had it all. But it wasn't all perfect. Linda's social nature sometimes meant she was more focused on others than on us. There were times when I felt like I had to compete for her attention. She could be impulsive, and that often led to arguments, but we always managed to work things out. At least, that's what I thought. Our relationship had its ups and downs, like any marriage. We had our share of disagreements and rough patches, but we always found our way back to each other. Linda was my rock when I lost my job a few years ago, and I supported her through the stress of switching careers. We leaned on each other, and I believe that made us stronger. As for me, I'm more of the quiet type. I work as a financial analyst, which suits my personality. I like numbers and predictability. Maybe that's why Linda's spontaneity was so appealing. We balanced each other out. I handled the practical side of things, while she brought in the excitement and unpredictability. Life was good, or so I thought. We had our routines, our shared moments of joy and struggle. Looking back, maybe I missed the signs, the small cracks in our foundation. But at the time, I was content, believing we were solid. Little did I know that our world was about to be turned upside down. The first time I felt something was off was about 6 months ago. Linda started working late more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. Her job as a real estate agent could be demanding, and she often had to meet clients after normal working hours. But then, her late nights became more frequent. She would come home tired and distracted, often smelling of a faint, unfamiliar cologne. One evening, she came home well past dinner time. I had already eaten with Megan and was sitting on the couch, trying to focus on a TV show. When Linda walked in, she seemed distant, almost like she was physically there, but her mind was elsewhere. Asked her how her day was, and she gave me a curt, busy, before heading straight to the shower. It was unlike her. She usually loved to unwind by chatting about her day. Then there was her phone. Linda had always been open about her messages and calls, but suddenly, her phone was always on silent, and she kept it close, never leaving it unattended. One Saturday morning, I saw her texting someone while making breakfast. When I asked who it was, she quickly said it was a client and changed the subject. It felt off, like she was hiding something. Another strange incident happened on our anniversary. We had planned a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. I spent the day preparing her favorite meal. She came home late again and seemed almost guilty. She apologized profusely, blaming a last-minute showing. The evening felt forced, and there was a noticeable tension between us. That night, I lay awake, feeling a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. The final straw was a weekend getaway we had planned for months. Linda seemed excited at first, but as the date approached, her enthusiasm waned. She kept checking her phone, even during our romantic dinner. On the second day, she claimed she had to make an urgent work call and disappeared for almost an hour. When she returned, she was flustered and distant, and the rest of the trip felt strained and awkward. All these little things started to pile up. I couldn't ignore the changes anymore. The late nights, the secrecy with her phone, the distracted conversations. It was like she was slipping away from me. My mind kept racing with thoughts and suspicions, but I had no concrete proof. I found myself looking at her differently, searching for any sign, any clue that could explain her behavior. Deep down, I hoped I was wrong. Maybe it was just my imagination running wild. But the more I noticed these strange behaviors, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The gnawing suspicion was driving me crazy. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I knew I had to find out the truth, one way or another. So I started my investigation. It felt wrong, sneaky, but I had to know. First, I tried to look at her phone when she was in the shower. My hands were shaking as I swiped through her messages, but everything looked normal. No suspicious names or unusual conversations. It only made me more paranoid. I started checking our phone bill for any strange numbers, but there were just too many to track. I decided to talk to Jake, my best friend and a cop. We were at a bar, sharing a couple of beers. Finally opened up to him about my suspicions. "Jake, something's not right with Linda," I said, staring at my drink. Jake looked at me with concern. "What do you mean, man? She's been working late, acting distant, and she's always on her phone," I explained. "Have you talked to her about it?" Jake asked. I tried, but she always has an excuse. "I don't want to accuse her without proof," replied. Jake sighed. "You could always use technology to check. Cameras or something." The idea seemed extreme, but I was desperate. The next day, I bought a few small cameras and installed them around the house when Linda and Megan were out. I felt like a spy in my own home, but I needed to know. I also installed a keylogger on our shared computer to track her online activity. My behavior changed. I became distant, always on edge. Linda noticed and asked me about it one night as we were getting ready for bed. "David, you've been acting strange lately. Is everything okay?" Linda asked, her voice soft but concerned. "Just work stress, I guess," I lied, avoiding her eyes. "Nothing to worry about." Days turned into weeks, and I obsessively checked the footage and computer logs. My emotions were all over the place. Fear, doubt, hope, anger. Wanted to be wrong so badly. Some days, I felt guilty for invading her privacy. Other days, I was convinced she was hiding something. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a familiar name in the keylogger log, Tom Anderson. He was a lawyer Linda worked with. My heart sank. Dug deeper and found emails between them. Nothing outright incriminating, but enough to fuel my doubts. They seemed too friendly, too familiar. Confronted Linda subtly, trying to gauge her reaction. "How's work? You and Tom have any big cases coming up?" Asked casually over dinner. Linda looked startled for a moment. Yeah, just the usual stuff." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. You mentioned him a few times," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. Linda quickly changed the subject, which only made me more suspicious. I felt trapped in a web of my own making, unable to break free without the truth. Then, one day, the cameras captured something undeniable. Linda and Tom, in our living room, their conversation too intimate, their body language too close. My blood boiled as I watched, anger and heartbreak mixing into a storm inside me. There it was, the proof I dreaded but needed. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed to plan. My emotions were a tangled mess: betrayal, rage, sorrow. I felt like my world was collapsing, and I didn't know how to stop it. I remember the exact moment I discovered the truth about Linda's affair. It was a Friday evening, and Megan was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Linda had texted me earlier, saying she'd be late due to a client meeting. I was sitting in our living room, scrolling through the camera footage on my laptop, my heart pounding in my chest. There it was, undeniable proof. The camera in our living room had captured Linda and Tom together. They were sitting close on the couch, their conversation soft and intimate. Then, Tom leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck, it was deep and passionate. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My hands started shaking, and I could barely breathe. "Linda," I whispered, my voice cracking. "How could you?" Watched the footage over and over, hoping I'd somehow misinterpreted it. But each time it was the same. The love of my life was with another man in our home, the place we had built together. I felt a wave of emotions: shock, anger, heartbreak. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I didn't bother wiping them away. When Linda came home, I was sitting on the couch, the laptop still open. She looked surprised to see me there, and even more surprised to see the look on my face. "David, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Sit down," I said, my voice cold and distant. She sat, eyeing me warily. "I know about you and Tom," I said, turning the laptop to face her. The footage was paused on the moment they kissed. Her face went pale, and she looked like she was going to be sick. "David, I can explain," she stammered, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Explain," I shouted, my anger boiling over. "Explain how you could betray me like this. How long, Linda? How long has this been going on?" "For about 6 months," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It just happened, David. I never meant for it to go this far. Never meant for it to go this far." I repeated, incredulous. "You brought him into our home, Linda." "Our home." She started to cry, but I couldn't find any sympathy. All I felt was rage and despair. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to make sense of it all. The woman I loved, the mother of my child, had been cheating on me for half a year. I felt like my entire world was crashing down. "Why, Linda? Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Wasn't I enough for you?" "It's not about you," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been feeling so lost, so disconnected. And Tom, he made me feel alive again. I'm so sorry, David. I never wanted to hurt you." Her words felt like another punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to do anything to make the pain go away. But all I could do was stand there, numb and broken. "I can't do this anymore," I said finally, my voice hollow. "I need you to leave. I can't even look at you right now." Linda sobbed harder, but she didn't argue. She gathered a few things and left, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt so empty. I collapsed onto the couch, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. I cried until I had no tears left, then sat in silence, trying to process the betrayal. Doubt and anger battled in my mind. I questioned everything: our past, our future, my own judgment. How could I have been so blind? Thought about Megan and how this would affect her. My heart itched for her, knowing this would shatter her world too. As the hours passed, the initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I felt like a part of me had been ripped away, and I didn't know how to move forward. But I knew one thing for certain: my life would never be the same. The next morning, I woke up to a house that felt eerily quiet. Megan was still at her friend's place, and I had spent the night on the couch. too drained to move. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I knew I had to confront Linda again, but this time with a clearer head. I called her and asked her to come over. When she arrived, she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence between us heavy and uncomfortable. "David, please let me explain," Linda started, her voice trembling. "I don't know what there is to explain," I replied, my tone flat. "You cheated on me, Linda. With Tom, in our home. How could you do this to us?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I felt so disconnected from you, from everything. Tom was just there. And you think that justifies it?" I asked, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You destroyed our family for what? A fling? A moment of feeling alive?" Linda sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry, David. I never wanted to hurt you or Megan. I made a terrible mistake." Took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "This isn't just about you, Linda. This affects all of us. Megan, she's going to be devastated." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant for any of this to happen." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of her betrayal hanging in the air. I knew what I had to do, even though it felt like a dagger to my heart. "I think we need to separate," I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "We can't keep living like this. It's not fair to any of us." Linda nodded, her face pale. "I understand. I'll stay with a friend for now. We can figure out the details later." After she left, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I called Jake, needing to talk to someone. He came over right away, his concern evident. "David, how are you holding up?" Jake asked, his voice gentle. "I don't know, man," I replied, my voice shaking. "I feel like my world is falling apart." "Do you think you'll be able to work things out?" Jake asked cautiously. "I don't think so," I said, shaking my head. "I can't trust her anymore. I don't know what to do." Jake put a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to decide everything right now. Take it one step at a time. You've got people who care about you." Later that day, I called my mother, Evelyn. She came over, offering the kind of support only a mother can. "I'm so sorry, David," she said, hugging me tightly. "You and Megan can stay with me for a while if you need to." "Thanks, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I just need to figure things out." Over the next few days, I contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. It was a decision that broke my heart, but I knew it was the right one. I also arranged for Megan to see a therapist, Susan Harris, to help her cope with the changes. Telling Megan was the hardest part. She cried, asking why this was happening to our family. I did my best to explain, to comfort her, but it felt inadequate. The pain in her eyes mirrored my own, and I vowed to do everything I could to help her through this. My days became a blur of legal paperwork, counseling sessions, and trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for Megan. I leaned on my friends and family, their support a lifeline in a sea of chaos. Despite the pain, I began to see a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild our lives, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The road ahead was uncertain, but for Megan's sake, I knew I had to keep moving forward. The weeks after Linda left were the hardest. The house felt like a stranger's home, full of memories I wanted to forget. I felt like I was living in a fog, going through the motions of daily life without really being there. The betrayal had changed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I found myself questioning everything, my choices, my worth, my ability to trust. The nights were the worst, filled with restless tossing and turning. During the day, I forced myself to keep busy, focusing on Megan and work, anything to keep my mind off the pain. One evening, Evelyn came over with dinner. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence heavy. "David, you need to take care of yourself," she said gently. "Megan needs you to be strong." "I know, Mom," I replied, sighing. "It's just hard. I feel like I'm failing her." "You're not failing anyone," Evelyn said firmly. "You're doing the best you can. That's all anyone can ask." I started seeing Susan Harris, the therapist, on Jake's recommendation. Our sessions were tough, but necessary. Susan helped me navigate the storm of emotions, teaching me how to cope with the anger and sadness. It was a slow process, but I began to see small changes. "How are you feeling today, David?" Susan asked one session. "Better, I guess," I replied. "Some days are still hard, but I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel." "That's progress," Susan said with a smile. "Remember, healing isn't linear. It's okay to have bad days." Megan and I also saw Susan together. It was important for her to feel heard and understood. We had open, honest conversations which brought us closer despite the pain. "Dad, will we ever be okay again?" Megan asked one evening, her voice small. "We will, Meg," I said, hugging her tightly. "It's going to take time, but we'll get through this together." I leaned on Jake a lot during this time. He was a constant source of support, always there when I needed to talk or just escape for a while. "How about we hit the gym tomorrow?" Jake suggested one day. "It might help clear your head." "Yeah, that sounds good," I replied. I could use a distraction. Working out became a new routine. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my anger and frustration into something positive. I started to feel stronger, not just physically but mentally too. Also picked up an old hobby, woodworking. It was something I used to love, but had abandoned over the years. I found solace in the simple act of creating, watching as raw materials transformed under my hands. It gave me a sense of accomplishment and peace. As the months passed, I began to rebuild my life. I found new routines and new joys. Megan and I grew closer, our bond strengthening as we navigated the aftermath together. We talked more, laughed more, and found ways to heal. One evening, Megan and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Do you miss her?" she asked suddenly. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm learning to let go. What's important now is us, making sure we're okay." "Yeah," Megan said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "We'll be okay, Dad." Support from friends, family, and therapy was crucial. I learned that it was okay to ask for help, to lean on others. It wasn't an instant recovery, but a journey. Each day was a step forward, some smaller than others, but progress nonetheless. Through this process, I discovered strength I didn't know I had. The affair had broken me, but it also forced me to rebuild, piece by piece. And in that rebuilding, I found a new version of myself, one that was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. A year has passed since the affair shattered my world, and life looks different now. Megan and I have settled into a new routine, one that's more stable and peaceful. We moved into a smaller house in a different part of town. It's our fresh start, a place without painful memories. I've continued with therapy, both alone and with Megan. It's helped me understand my emotions and process the betrayal. Susan Harris has been a lifeline, guiding us through the darkest times and helping us find a way forward. Megan is doing better too. She's still seeing Susan, and the progress she's made is heartening. We're closer than ever, and our relationship has become one of honesty and support. Work has been a sanctuary. Throwing myself into my job has provided structure and a sense of purpose. The camaraderie with my colleagues and the satisfaction of a job well done has been incredibly grounding. I've also rekindled friendships that I had neglected over the years. Jake remains a steadfast friend, and we've grown even closer. He's been my rock, always ready with advice or just a listening ear. The woodworking hobby has turned into a small side business. Creating furniture and custom pieces has given me a sense of accomplishment. It's a tangible way to see progress and growth, something I desperately needed. Reflecting on the affair and its aftermath, I've learned a lot about myself. I've realized my own worth and the importance of self-respect and trust. I have also learned to communicate better and to be more present for Megan. This experience has taught me the importance of resilience and the strength we can find in ourselves when faced with adversity. For anyone going through a similar situation, my advice is to take it one day at a time. Don't be afraid to seek help from friends, family, or professionals. It's okay to feel a mix of emotions and to have bad days. Healing is a journey, not a destination. Jake, do you ever think about how we got here? Asked one day as we were working out. All the time, man, Jake replied, but look at you now. You've come a long way. Thanks, I said, feeling a swell of gratitude. Couldn't have done it without you. And Megan, Jake added, she's a strong kid, just like her dad. Looking back, the affair was a turning point. It forced me to confront painful truths and make difficult decisions, but it also led me to a place of growth and strength. Not the same person I was before, and that's okay. I've learned to find joy in the little things and to cherish the relationships that truly matter. As we move forward, Megan and I are building a life that's grounded in trust and love. It's not always easy, but it's real. And for that, I'm grateful. To everyone out there struggling with betrayal or loss, remember that it's possible to find hope and healing. It takes time, but you can come out stronger on the other side. If you found the story interesting, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell, and don't forget to give us a like. Thanks for watching. See you all soon.